Hello everyone, welcome back to another video of Code Pravah. I hope you all will be doing very good. In today's video, we are going to make a Notes app using ReactJS. It will be a great project for ReactJS learners. So let's get started. So I will quickly move over to my VS Code where I have created one project with the name of Notes app. In my app component, I am printing one text that is Hello World. So first thing first, I will create one folder with the name of components inside my src directory. Let's create our first component with the name of Notes app, and I will quickly initialize this component as a function-based component. Now let me import this component into my app component as Notes app, and instead of this h1, I'm going to render this Notes app. So as you can see, it's rendering here. Now let's work on this Notes app. So I will quickly remove this div and I'll create one div with the class name of Notes app. And inside this div, I'll create one h2 element with the class name of app header. And here I will assign one heading as Notes app. Now I want to create one text area here where I can type my notes and one button by which I can add the note. So I'll create one component with the name of Note Editor, and I'll create one dummy component. And then I will import this Note Editor into my Notes app component, and just below this h2 tag, I'm going to render it right away here. Let's work on this Note Editor component. So I'll remove this div and I'll create one div with the class name of Note Editor. Then inside this div, I'm going to create one tag with the name of text area. Then I will assign some properties to this text area element such as placeholder and the number of rows, which is 5 for now. After this text area, I'll create another div with the class name of Note Editor Footer, and inside this div, I'll create one button with the class name of Add Button, and the text I want to display on this button is Add. So as you can see, this button is being rendered here. One more feature I would like to have is the different color of different notes. So along with the note text, I want a user to choose the color of his note. So I'll create one more div just above this add button, and I'll assign a class name of color picker. And inside this div, I want to render my different colors so that I can choose the color of my current note. Now, in order to render those color pickers, I'll create one more component with the name of color picker. I will initialize one dummy component. I'll simply remove this div from here, and I'll create one input which will be having a type as radio, and I'll assign some name to it as color pick, and then I want a label. We'll come back to this component again, but for now let's import this component into my notes editor, and I want to use this color picker component just inside this color picker div. Now I need some colors, so I'll create one variable with the name of colors, and I'll assign one array of colors to this colors variable. You can give any color of your choice, but I am fine with these 5 colors. So what I'll do, I'll go into my color picker div again, and for each color, I'm going to render this component that is color picker. Now, in order to avoid the warning, I'll pass index as key, some properties such as color as color, and then I'll pass one ID, which will be the current index. Let's go back to our color picker component, and we are passing 2 properties to this component, that is color and ID. So for this input, I'll set the value as the current color, which is coming, and I'll assign ID as the incoming ID from Pravah. Similarly, into the label, I'll be using ID here, and into the style property for this, I'll assign background color as the incoming color from the prop. So at this point of time, we are done with color picker component. So as you can see, I'm able to see 5 radio buttons, but this is not what we wanted. We want actually a good looking note editor. So I'll go to my CSS. So as you can see, I have already written some global CSS. Now we have to work on the body part. So I'll assign a lighter grayish type of background. And then of course, I'll choose one font family, and I'm going to choose this font family, which is giving me a good look for the notes. So I'll remove this text alignment as center from this app class, and then I'll assign some vertical padding. As you can see, the content has come into the left side. So I'll say display as flex, And by using justify content to center and align items to center, I'll bring my whole content into the center. One thing I can notice, the font inside this text area is not being reflected. So I'll say for all the inputs or text area, you have to inherit the font from its parent, which is giving it a better look. Now let's work on this Notes app class. So I'll simply copy it from here and I'll paste it here. And for the Notes app, I want to utilize the whole width which is available, but at the same time, I want my width to be limited to max width of 960 pixels. Then let's work on this app header part. So I'll copy the class name, I'll paste it here. So first thing I would like to do, I want to assign the text alignment to center because it has come to left. And then I want a font weight of, let's say, 500. And I want to underline this. So I'll use text decoration as underline and then a little bit of letter spacing because it's a heading, and the color I want to assign is gray. At the same time, I will assign some shadow to this text element. Then let's work on this node editor part. So I'll go into this and I'll copy the first class, that is node editor itself. I'll paste it here, and for this node editor, I want to utilize the 100% of width. At the same time, I will assign max width of 600 pixels. Also, because this node editor div contains the text area, so I will assign some padding to this. So I'll assign a padding of 16 pixel to this node editor div. At the same time, I'll assign some horizontal margin, let's say 24 pixel. I'll say use a background color of white. Then I will assign some box shadow to this particular element, and then I will give one border radius of 2 pixel. Let's visualize this and let me just increase the width. So as you can see, it's looking good for now. Let's adjust the width of VS Code also so that we can properly analyze the view. Now this text area is not looking too good. So let's work on this part. So I can select the text area using this element selector, and I'll say utilize the 100% width and don't resize. It means I don't want the user to resize it like this. So I'll remove this resizing functionality, and if I refresh it, you can see there is no more resizing option from here. Then I want to assign some margin from all the corners, and the font, whatever I want to write, I want it to be 16 pixel. And then I don't want any border here, so I'll say border none. And the font, whatever I'm writing here, I want a lighter font. So I'll say font weight of 300. But one thing you can see, whenever I'm clicking on this text area, one border is generating, that is not border, that is outline. So I'll say whenever this text area is focused, at that time, make the outline as 0. So now if I click on this text area, you can see there is no any outline, which is good for us. So our next class on which we have to work is this note editor footer. So I'll go back to my CSS, I'll paste it and I'll say display as flex. And because we have two things, one is this color picker and one button. So I want to justify my content to space between. Now you can see they are on different ends, but there is one issue that this is looking very weird. It's not an actual color picker. It is more looking like one radio. So let's work on this. So I'll copy this color picker, and inside this color picker, I have color picker component, which is having one input and one label. So I'll go here and I'll paste the class name, and then I have the input. Now for this input, I don't want to show it as a radio. So we will make our own input. So for now, I'll say visibility to be hidden. At the same time, I don't want this input tag to occupy any width and height. Then we have to work on the label, and this is inside this color picker. So I'll say label, and believe me, this label is going to work as the actual color picker. So I'll say display as inline block, and then I want a width of 25 pixel and height same as width. So you can see the colors are being rendered here, but I want them to be rounded. So I'll say border radius of 50%. Also, for each label, I want to assign some margin. So I'll say margin from right of 5 pixel, and the position I want to be relative. And because these will be clickable, so I'll say cursor as pointer. Now, We want to show some indication whenever a user has clicked on any color. For example, if I have clicked on this yellow color, there is no any indication or feedback by which I can understand this has been clicked or selected. So let's work on that part. So I'll say color picker, and inside this color picker there is input, and the input is having a type of radio, and whenever that is checked, what we have to do inside the label, we have to work, and I'll say first thing first, content as empty string. I don't want any content, and position as absolute. And then for this element, I'll say width of 5 pixel and height of 10 pixel. It means inside these elements or labels, there will be a pseudo element created which will be having a width and height as we have given here 5 and 10 respectively. So for that element, I'll create one border from right side. So I'll say border right 1 pixel and solid. So you can see I clicked on this yellow color, and if I click on this blue, so you can see there is one border which has been generated. Similarly, I'll create one border from bottom, and I'll say 1 pixel and solid. So you can see this kind of border has been generated, and if I click on any of these, this border is being shifted to that particular clicked element, and I want this element to come in center. So I'll say from left I want 10 pixel. Okay, it's fine for me. And from top I want 6 pixel, which is making it into center. And now I will rotate it by 45 degree, which is giving it a look like a checked icon. So whenever I click on any icon, it is marking it as a check, which is a feedback for the user that this element or this color has been selected. But I'll reduce some opacity to 0.5. Now it's a better look. So it's working for me. Now let's walk for this button, and this button is sitting here, that is having a class of add button. So I'll add this add button here itself, and I'll say width of 100 pixel and height of, let's say, 35 pixel. And then the color, whatever the text which is written inside it, will be of white color. I want to add some padding, let's say 5 pixel from vertical and 10 pixel horizontal padding. And the font I want to be bold, because this is a button and this is how I want to design it. And the cursor of type pointer obviously. And then I want a background of dark red, and the text color for this button I want white. At the same time, I don't want any border, so I'll say border none, and I'll say border radius of, let's say, 2 pixel, because this is what we are maintaining for this card as well. And I'll say transition, and I want to apply this transition property on all the properties, and I'll say 0.3 second and ease. And at the same time, I want one box shadow, and this time let's say 5 pixels of big shadow and a lighter red color. So let's move down and we'll work on the hover property for this button. So I'll copy the box shadow and I'll just reduce this box shadow to 3 from 5. At the same time, I want to shift it a little bit from top whenever the hover effect is happening. Let's work on the click part. So I'll copy this whole hover effect and I'll say whenever it is active, reduce the box shadow to 0. I don't want any box shadow at all, but I want a larger shift from top. Let's see how it is behaving. I think I missed seconds. Okay, let me add seconds here in transition, and now you can see it's working smoother now. Now let's work on the functionality part for this Notes app. So I'll go into my Notes app, and from the React library, I'll import useState because I want to store my notes. So I'll create one state with the name of notes, and initially it will be an empty array. And let's create one function that is handle note add. So whenever any note is being added, it will accept one property that is new note. And what I'll do, I will add that particular note into the start of this notes array. So I can do using the unshift property, it will add the new element at the very beginning of the array, that is at 0th index. So I'll use it and I'll assign new node to this. and because I want re-rendering to be happening, and I'll set the note state as a new notes. So let me pass this property to note editor, that is handle note add. So let me go to my note editor, and now here I can grab that function that is handle note add. So before pushing my new note into the notes array, I will need to make my input as a controlled component. So I'll import useState from React library. And for this text editor, I'm going to create one state with the name of text, and initially it will be an empty string. Similarly, because this is also one input, that is the color, so I'll create another state with the name of color. And initially I want some by default color, and let's say by default we'll be using the color which is at 0th index. Now for this text area, I'll set the value as the text, and whenever any change is being detected into text area, I'll pick those changes and I'll assign it into my text state. Similarly, for this div, which is my color picker and which is containing all the radio buttons, I'll assign value as the current color, and on change, whenever any change is happening on those radio buttons, I can simply set my color. So I can call set color function, and those colors I can detect from event.target.value. So now this text area and these color pickers are controlled components. So now let's create the functionality of adding notes using handle note add function. So I'm going to create one more function. I'll call it on note add, and I will call this function whenever on click event is happening on this button. So before adding the note into the actual array, I will check if there is no any text. I will not do anything. It means I will not allow a user to create empty notes. And then I'll create one object, let's call it new note, and it will be containing the text property and the color property. And the third property I want is ID, and this ID I want unique because the notes will be displayed into the particular order. But when the user want to delete a note, he can delete any note in any order. So in order to track the particular note which has been deleted, we need some ID. So you can use UUID or any kind of library or some auto increment type of ID. But for now, I'll use date.now property, which will give me the current date. So this will work fine for me. And then I will call this handle note add function, which has been passed from its parent, and I'll pass the new note which I just created to this function. And then whenever any note has been added, I'll set my text to empty string. I don't want to reset my color because it can be a scenario when a user is liking some color and he want to create all his notes into the same color, so he don't need to choose the color again and again. So let's come back to our notes app, and here I'll add one useEffect, and the dependency will be on the notes array especially. And this is just for debugging purpose. I want to see if my adding functionality is working properly or not. So let me open my inspect element and let me add my first node, and I want to assign some color, and let me add it. So I can see my first node has been added and the color is BA68, and if I check my color, BA68, which is purple, which is working. Let me add my yellow note, and this time I'm going to choose this yellow color. So as you know, we are using the unshift property. So the first node will be our new node, and it is having the color as yellow. So it is working fine. Now let's work on the second part where we have to show our nodes which has been added. So I'll create one more component with the name of nodes grid, and I'll create one dummy component here, and then I'll remove this div and I'll create one fresh div with the class name of nodes grid. And because this will be responsible for displaying the nodes, so obviously it will receive the list of nodes, which is an array. So what I can do for now, I'll use nodes.map property, and for each node I want to display one node here. So let me create one more component with the name of node. And similarly, I have created one dummy component, and I'll go into my nodes grid and I'll import node component here, and for each node I want to render the node here. So let's go back to nodes app and I'll import nodes grid here, and just after the nodes editor I want to display my nodes grid because it will be responsible for showing the nodes. So I need to pass my nodes here as nodes. So you can see because I added two nodes, and if I add some another node, it is displaying the third node. And because the current node component is just a dummy component which is just displaying one text of node, and that's why it is showing three node. So let's work on this part. So I'll go to my nodes grid, and to node I want to pass first thing, that is key. I don't want any warning, and because the node is containing some ID which I can use as a unique key here, and then I want to pass my color. So I'll say node dot color, which is a property which we have assigned on each node. And here I don't want my node component to be self-closing, so I'll remove it from here, and I'll add it as a component which can accept some children, and I'll pass node dot text as a child for this component. So let's go into our node component which can accept the color and the children, and I'll remove this div from here, and I'll create one div with the class name of node, and inside this div I want to create a span with the class name of delete node, and inside this span we will simply rendering x, and this x we will treat as a cross icon in order to delete some node. And then I want to display my children, whatever I'm receiving from my parent. As you can see, now it's displaying our node. And if I add a new node, let's say my new node, you can see my new node is being rendered, but at the same time this x which we just added is displaying like this. We will work on this fix. Let's go to CSS and let's write some styling for these nodes. So I'll start from nodes grid. I'll copy the class name from here. I'll paste it here, and I will say margin 0 and auto. And inside this nodes grid, I have all these nodes, and each node is having a class name of node. So let's work on this node part, and I'll say width I want of 200 pixel, and the color of this text I want a lighter dark, and I'll say I want a height auto. If you remember, we are also passing this color property to this node component, so let's use it here as a style. So I'll say background color as the color which is incoming from parent, and if I add a new node with yellow color, you can see it's working, and then if I add another one with blue, it's working fine. So let's continue with the CSS. I want a border radius of 2 pixel which we are maintaining from the start for all the components, and then I want to increase the padding, and let's say vertical padding of 10 pixel and horizontal by 15 pixel, and then I want to assign some margin from bottom, that is 10 pixel. Also I want to preserve the white spaces, so I'll say white spaces preserve wrap. What does it mean? If I say like ABC, and if I give multiple spaces and then XYZ, and if I add it, you can see the spaces are preserved, and if I just comment it, you would see it trimmed all your spaces. But in the case of nodes, we generally preserve it. So I'll say preserve those spaces. And for the word wrap, I don't want it to be overflowing, so I'll say break the word. So what will happen in this case? If I'll add a word which is very longer, and because we are limited in terms of width, and if I add it, it will automatically break the word. And if I don't do this, you would see it is overflowing, which I don't want. Then I will assign some box shadow to this node component, and I want to apply transition on the box shadow, and let's say 0.3 second. So I'll say whenever I am hovering on the node, and this time I'll change the box shadow. Let me just copy it from here and paste it, and I'll change the box shadow in this case. So you can see it's working fine, but one thing you can notice that they are coming into a single column. So here I want to be a little more creative. I want to show all my nodes in a particular manner, and I want to add some animations. So I know there is one library which is masonry, and this is basically for the grid. You don't need to handle the grid by yourself. So there is a library that is masonry layout which you can use for this. So let's install it in our computer, and it installed. So I'll start my project again, and it has been started. I'll go to my nodes grid, and I'll import masonry from masonry layout, and it's very simple to use. I just need to import useRef and useEffect hook from React library, and I'll create a ref with the name of grid ref, and initially it will be null. Similarly, for the masonry, I'll create one more ref with the name of masonry, and this one will be null into the start, because this is the div where I want to apply the grid. So I'll say ref equals to grid ref, and then I'm going to use effect here, and this will be just on the mounting. So let's keep it as an empty array dependency, and I'll say whenever my grid ref is ready, it means it will have some value. So I'll say masonry dot current, which is again another ref. I'll create new masonry, and it takes grid ref dot current property, and it refers to the current grid, and it takes some property. So item selector, what you want to select, and because I want to select my node, so I'll say dot node, which is having this class, and then I'll say the column width I want is 200, and gutter, which is the gap property as we use in the flex, so I'll say 10, and then one more property that is fit width, and I'll say true to this. So in this use effect, I have initialized my masonry ref, and then whenever there is any change into nodes which is happening, what I have to do, I have to just reload my masonry grid. So I'll say masonry dot current dot reload items. It's a property which is inside this masonry library. Again, I'll say masonry dot current dot layout. So it will organize everything for you. So let's try to add few nodes. New node, let's say yellow color. So it has been added into the center. And if I say second node, and let's say of pink color, so you can see there is an animation, and we did not add any animation. We are just using that library. So I'll say third node. Let's give a green color to this, and this time it's working. So let's go back to app.css. So the last feature on which we want to work, this delete button, it is currently being appended into the start of each node, and this is coming from this node where I have this delete node class for this X character. So I'll paste it here, and I'll say the position I want is absolute, and then I want it 5 pixels from right side, which is making it fine, and then I don't want to display it. So when I want to display it, so whenever you hover on the node, then I want to set some property on this delete node block, and I'll say display as block. So when you hover on this, then that X will be appearing. And because it should act as a button, so I'll say cursor as pointer, and I want to add a color to this X as a lighter black color. So let's see, it's working fine. Now if I add some more nodes and some different colors, you can see it's working as per the grid width, whatever is available. And if I increase the size, it's adjusting according to that. Fine. Let's go back to our nodes app. We have already added the function to add the node. So let's add another function to delete the node. So I'll say handle node delete, and this will expect the node which you want to delete. So I'll say I will take out the node ID from the current node, and I'll say new nodes, which is a new variable itself, and I want to apply filter on the previous nodes, and for each node I will say return me only those nodes which are not having the ID same as the node ID which has been asked for the deletion. So whenever our new nodes are ready, these are the filter nodes. At that time I'll say set nodes as the new nodes, and I'll copy the function name, and I'll pass it into my nodes grid where I'm actually displaying my nodes, and I'll go to my nodes grid, and I'll grab this property, and I'll bind it here into this node. So I'll pass on delete prop to this node component, and what I'll do here, whenever this function will be invoked, I'll call that handle node delete, and I'll pass the current node to this function. So let me quickly copy this and go to my node component, and here before the children I can grab on delete, and on the span I can say on click just bind this function here. So let's give it a try. if I go and delete the second one, it has been deleted. And you can see the shift is happening very smooth. So let me just take a bigger look here. And if I add a note, added a new note, and then after few spaces, I say added or not any text. I don't know what I'm writing, and if I just add it, it has been added. So you can see if I just add a word which is very longer in length, it has been break down as per our CSS, and you can see the grid is adjusting itself because of that masonry layout. So this is the beauty of using that external library. If you don't want to use that, it's totally up to you. But if you see, the delete functionality is working perfectly fine, and it is arranging whatever you have on the screen. So if I delete the first one, you can see a whole shift is happening as a node. So what we can do into the next step? Into the next step, if you want to explore more, what you can do, you can make this notes app as an advanced note app where we can have multiple columns like to do, in progress, done, or we can say deferred, or we can say no need to do. And then you can apply drag and drop property. For example, if I can grab this node and drag it into the in progress, so the status can be changed to in progress. And this is how you can make it working like a Kanban board, or that will be a advanced notes app, I would say. And if you face any issue, just let me know. I'll create another video for that, which will be a subsequent video for this notes app. And if you really learn from this video, please give a like to this video and share it with your friends. So if you are still watching till here, let me know into the comment section. And thanks a lot for watching.